coming today. My name is Inspector Paul Woodruff. I'm with the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary's Crimes Against Persons Unit of the Criminal Investigation Division. We wanted to put out a media advisory to the public that we're very concerned for the safety of persons who are using illicit drugs. The Royal Newfoundland Constabulary and the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit are very concerned, along with Eastern Health, with regards to the drug overdoses that have been reported this month. We've seen an unusually large number. We've seen at least 16 reported drug-related overdoses. We have reason to believe there's been significantly more than that. And we've also seen 2 of these overdoses being fatal. The latest of which was last night. Even after there was a warning put out by Eastern Health and by the RNC, we still saw an overdose and unfortunately a fatality last night. We're seeing fentanyl being laced in with some common street drugs such as cocaine, heroin, and in the past we've seen, and it's possible in the future we may see it in counterfeit Percocet pills as well. Fentanyl, as people are learning very quickly, is very powerful opiate. It's 100 times stronger than morphine, and it's extremely dangerous when used not under the direction of a physician. It's a legitimate drug that should be used in cooperation with a physician under their direction, and unfortunately that's not always the case. Fentanyl in very small quantities, such as 2 milligrams in its pure form, could kill a person. Therefore, we're asking and warning the public that if anybody comes in contact with fentanyl, this could lead to death, as we've seen. And we ask that if anybody comes in contact with fentanyl, they call 911 as soon as possible. We're also asking if anybody has any information about where this fentanyl is coming from, if we can trace back where these drugs are coming into the province or being manufactured, that information is passed along to us. We encourage people to use 911 for emergencies. If anybody wants to report any information, we ask them to call 729-8000. And we also have the tip line at Crime Stoppers, 1-800-222-TIPS, 1-800-222-8477. We would ask that members of the public use extreme caution if anybody comes into fentanyl contact.
What have your officers been seeing on the street when it comes to drug seizures? Have you been noticing more fentanyl?
Fentanyl was seized last year. We did have seizures a few times last year, and then again, of course, we're seeing it this month with these overdoses in this last month is of particular concern.
And what have you been doing to try to find the source of where this is coming from?
This is it's a joint investigation. Our major crimes unit is looking at the death of the individual, and we'll look at all deaths in cooperation with the chief medical examiner for the province.
The woman, sorry.
And we're also investigating these on behalf of the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit to look at the importation of drugs and how the drugs are brought into the province and moved within the province.
Have you been interviewing or questioning people who have survived these overdoses?
Yes, we do.
The woman who passed away last night, do you have any indication as to where the drugs that she used came from?
It's very early days with that, and that is a focus of our investigation. We are looking into that for sure.
If you found the drug dealer or the source of these drugs, what kind of charge would be laid in a situation where someone has passed away?
These cases are all very complex, and every case is done individually. You know, if you're talking about what charges could be laid, everything is done individually. We would have to look at all the interviews, all the facts of the case, everything that happened, and do them individually, not prejudged at all.
Do you anticipate any arrests to be made at this point, or any investigations that have opened as a result of last night's death or the other death?
We hope so, and that's our purpose, is to carry on the investigation. But it just happened late last night, so we're heavily into it. And at this point, all I can say is that we're working hard on it, and we'll continue to work around the clock and through the weekend.
Why do people lace drugs with fentanyl?
Fentanyl itself is a drug that's not really native to Newfoundland, Labrador. We're starting to see, and I have suspected that it's going to be showing its way here into this province. It offers a different kind of high, and it's cheaper to purchase than it is to regular purchase cocaine, actual heroin, things of that nature.
Sergeant Knight, do you think it's being mixed in this province, or do you think it's being mixed on the mainland and then shipped here?
Investigation is early stages. I really don't want to prejudge and make a statement of what I think is happening at this point in time.
Can you give us some context as to how rare it is to have these many overdoses? We know in the 2000s that you had the rise of OxyContin, and we saw overdoses then, but when have we seen something like this before?
overdoses, whether they're accidental or intentional, are common, unfortunately, so we do see them, but not in this cluster. To see 16 this month is unusual, and it's a spike for us, which is why we're putting out this alert today. We want to make sure that if anybody is using illicit drugs, that we capture their attention and try to educate them about and put out a warning to them.
Is it possible that drug dealers don't even know that their product is tainted?
There is always that possibility. However, the goal, number one objective of a person who is trafficking in an illicit substance is profit. So if they can obtain their drug of choice to sell on the streets, their goal is to maximize profit. So the cheaper they can get their product out on the street, the more profit they make.
So is this confirmed now that it is fentanyl? Have you gotten the results back?
No, we believe that fentanyl is involved, but we have not confirmed it yet. We're waiting on the tests. Again, last night was a death last night, so we're still investigating it. But we're concerned that it is a fentanyl-related death. We're pretty confident with that. But no, we don't have the test results back.
Well,
We've consulted with the chief medical examiner, and we thought this was an appropriate warning to put out.
what makes you believe that fentanyl is related to these deaths, and why are we connecting fentanyl with these overdoses that are happening? Can you give a better explanation as to that?
Well,
Currently in, I guess, it's very highly publicized in British Columbia. We've seen the fentanyl-related deaths. It's not uncommon for drug trade to mix these type of drugs in with another drug, masking it as one other. So in other words, people think they're taking heroin when in actual fact they're not taking heroin, they're actually taking higher doses of fentanyl. This is, what we believe is happening here, but it's still, an investigation's ongoing, and that's where we are at this point.
Some of the health professionals are talking about unexpected reactions, people who might be using drugs and not have this similar situation happen before, and be really taking off guard about what happened to them. Is that kind of what you're talking about there?
Yes, I would think that we had to look at the addiction itself as a disease. So people, they know their immune systems and how much tolerance they have in their systems to be able to handle certain drugs. So if a person who is an oxy user and is taking a regular dosage of 2 or 3 pills a day, we'll say, use an example, and their body can sustain that, they know where they are. But if they take in 2 and 3 now, and all of a sudden they have a completely different reaction where they end up in hospital, it's a good indication that that's not what they're taking.
What precautions does your officers have to take when it comes to fentanyl? Because isn't it it can be dangerous when you're in contact with it?
it can certainly be dangerous. Fentanyl it certainly hit BC very hard. We've all seen that in the news, and I guess the rest of Canada is still trying to play catch up. So we're working very closely with other agencies in Atlantic Canada and Ontario and whatnot to make sure that we have appropriate response. So we're working that together with other police agencies. Right now we do have personal protective equipment in the vehicles. We're looking to see if we can upgrade that to give them some better equipment. We have recently just purchased naloxone for our officers, and we're going to be issuing that in the very short term. We've got some training that we're rolling out, that we're in the process of rolling out a policy on it. We're working closely with the Her Majesty's Penitentiary staff and with the Sheriff's Office to make sure it's a joint response. So we have to make sure that all justice is on the same side, and that we're all uniformly rolling it out. So we're doing that. We've fortunately, I guess, for the RNC, we have a lot of paramedics and medical hospitals that are close by, so we can always rely on those people. Even last night when we were dealing with a suspected fentanyl case, we have a great relationship with Eastern Health. They can provide paramedics to stand by in an area just in case we have concerns, so we'll always use that. So our police officers have immediate personal protection equipment. We're looking at upgrading that. And then we have an RNC has a clandestine lab response team, which Sergeant and I can talk to more, which he runs, and they can handle almost any situation.
So as of now, none of the police cars have naloxone kits, or they're starting?
Police cars do not have it now. We do have our officers with the CSFEU do have naloxone. We do have a select person in our force that has it, but for the general frontline officers, that's going to be rolled out very soon.
Inspector, you said it was heroin, Percocet, and what are the other cases? What are the other, or are there any other drugs that are causing these overdoses?
Right now we have, it's one specific drug that's being unrolled out there. People are thinking they're taking heroin, but we have had some information come into us that people have taken cocaine, what they believe to be cocaine, small amounts of it, and have resulted in overdosing and hospital treatment.
Is there anything users can look for in terms of a smell or visually as like a cue that something has been tainted?
Most people who use addictive type drugs are familiar with the product. The only thing I could say is these drugs are designed to mask another way. Fentanyl has been used to counterfeit Percocet, OxyContin, where they come in, they look exactly like the normal, the pill, the actual medication that's prescribed by a physician. I will say though, I think people need to, if they're going to use, and we don't condone usage, but they need to practice safe usage. If you're going to use an illicit drug of that nature, then maybe doing something in pairs, making sure you have some of the Narcan kits have been provided by the province that are out there. So people need to be safe.
What can you tell us about people who are using fentanyl as their drug of choice? Is that something that's happening in this province?
I can't really say that I know of any individual that's actually knowingly taken fentanyl deliberately. We have had some issues here. We know there's usage of fentanyl patches where they're being taken apart, scraped off, the drugs that are used that way. But the drugs that are currently on the street are now, that actually fentanyl there comes from a laboratory where it's designed, mixed and put together as a proper medication. The fentanyl that we suspect might be on the street might be coming from outside the country.
How would you know that?
Pardon me?
How do you know that? How can you trace it out just by the strain of
Yes.
the chemical makeup?
The chemical makeup itself.
Is there any way to say how big a bad batch of drugs could be if you have 16 overdoses? Is there any way to know how long this can circulate through a population?
Well, and you're right, it's very hard to know that, and that's our concern, so that's part of the reason we're putting out the warning here today. And the overdoses that we've seen and the numbers that we've seen, 16 in the last month, have been Metro related, but there's nothing to say that it won't expand outside of Metro, or there's nothing to say that it wouldn't, it couldn't get even bigger. So we're just trying to put this preventative message out right now.
You mentioned a fentanyl seizure last year. What form was that in? Was that cut into something?
Pill.
Pill. Okay. And the lab testing, do you have a timeline on that? Is there any sense of when the results might come back?
No, the lab testing it's been sent off, and you have to appreciate some of the samples that have sent have been small in amounts, and so we are not sure of the timeline. We're hoping a few days.
Okay.
As well, the toxicology report from the medical examiner's office is underway as well too. And I would think that Dr. Avis would have probably a faster route to get those results than we might have.
I have a question about the behavior of people who are addicted to opiates. Probably best directed to you, Sergeant Knight. We're hearing that there are cases where people will buddy up and one person will take a dangerous amount of drugs and the other person will watch them to see if they're going to overdose, and if they do, they're handy with the naloxone kit to bring them back to life. Do you know of anything like that in your experience?
I really don't have a lot of information in relation to that. I have heard similar things you're saying, but I have nothing to substantiate it.
Are the victims in these cases cooperating, I guess you would say, in terms of are they willing to answer your questions about where they're getting their products from?
You have to understand, a person who's addicted to an illicit subject, I'm sure doesn't want to come in contact with the police and then result in or face criminal charges. So I think some of these people have been reluctant to speak with us, and others have come forth and said, look, I have a problem and I'm concerned for my safety, and here's some of the things I've taken. So yeah, we have a mixed reaction to this right now.
You mentioned British Columbia, in a way, a lot of these reported cases involving fentanyl have been moving across the country almost. Also personal protections. Is there a reason as to why those aren't in place for all officers already at this point here? I mean, it seems like there would have been almost an expectation that it would show up here eventually.
We have equipped our officers. We do have some personal protective equipment in the vehicles, but again, this is something, it is relatively new that I know it came in last year out in BC and it's working its way across the country. So we've been working proactively to get this done as quick as we can.
Okay.
Our officer safety is a very much a paramount focus with us. We want to get this done as quickly as we can.
As well, naloxone and Narcan, which is a generic form of it, can't be left in the cold. So if you leave it in a patrol car, it freezes, it becomes null and void, and it is not able to be used.
The seizure there before Christmas, which I think may be the one you're talking about, or sometime in December, that was in the pill form. So is it fair to say that these overdoses, I guess, would be the first time you're aware of that fentanyl is being mixed with something else rather than taken on its own?
Right now, in a conversation I had yesterday with Dr. Avis, we have no known fatalities related to fentanyl in this province at this point in time, and none for heroin either.